Hello and welcome back. In a previous video, we took a basic tour of Google Sheets and how to work with it. This time we're going to talk about data types. Now just know that these data types are not exclusive to Google Sheets. Sometimes they vary a little bit, but they're very important in any kind of application that works with data. So from Microsoft Excel to Access database, just programming, just about anything. Okay. So we've got some basic types and subtypes listed down here on the left. I left myself little notes over here. So the first one is text, and that's very simple. If I start to type something like this, January, that's text. In Google Sheets, it's very often used as a label, so a category header or a row header, whatever, to identify what the data means. The second type is a number. And I'll just type a number in there. Okay, a number is exactly what you think it is. You know, it's composed of digits, but what we can do with it is very different than what we can do with text. For example, I can add numbers together, whereas if I add strings of text together, I can actually do it, but the result is not terribly meaningful. Okay, just for your information, you can enter digits as text. So to do that, I would put the equal sign, I would put a quote mark, 24, and then another quote mark. Now, even though these both look like 24, you can see one's aligned to the right, which is the default for a number, and one is aligned to the left, which is the default for text. And if you were to include a number in something like an address, it would be treated very differently than a number that's meant to be a number. Let me delete that for a second. I'm going to put in 24 again over here so we can look at another subtype of number. Another subtype of number would be a decimal. So if I needed this 24 to be more accurate to more decimal places, I can simply come to this menu, and you can see that the 2 zeros here with the arrow pointing to the right, that lets me one at a time increase the number of decimal places on that number. And if I've gone too far, I can use this tool with the arrow pointing to the left, and it will remove those decimal points. Okay, so that's how I change from a whole number, an integer, into a decimal. Another subtype of number is currency. So right over here, I can get that by clicking the dollar sign. And now it knows that it needs a symbol, it needs a dollar sign, and it needs 2 decimal points after. So it will do that conversion for you. The next subtype would be a percentage. Now I've typed 24 in here, and if I do click this percentage button, you'll notice it comes to 2400%. And that's not a mistake. 24 is 2400%. The number 1 represents 100%. So what I've done here is misentered my information. Now you have two choices to work with percentage to rectify this. Let's look at it here. If I were to type in 0.24 and hit the percentage sign, yes, that would be 24%. Because 0.2 is actually 24%. The other and more efficient thing to do is to come up to this cell and make it a percentage first. Now when I type in 24, it knows how to handle it, so it keeps that information, makes that information represented accurately. So let me just paste that in there so we have a reasonable example. I'll get rid of those. Another data type is date. So if I type in 1/2/18, it will know that's a date. In other words, if I try to sort it or put it in order, or if you're doing more advanced things like you're trying to find a difference between two dates, if it doesn't recognize it as dates, that won't work well. But Sheets is very, very good at recognizing dates. As a matter of fact, if I were to put in 1/3 enter, it still recognizes this as a date. If I click on it, or if I click on any of these, you'll see that the values are displayed up here in the formula bar. So if I click on 1/3, you can see what it's really storing is 1/3/2019. So it's going to, if you don't give it a year, it's going to assume that it's the current year that you're talking about. and this will be stored this way. However, you won't see it that way. It's adjusted the formatting on this particular cell to display it without the year, and later on we'll look at how to adjust those formats. They're visual formats. The data is the same, but the way it's presented to you is a little bit different. Okay, and the last data type is formula. It's not really a data type, but it's something we can do in the cells. So in order to let Sheets know that you want to do a formula, let's get a couple more numbers here. 34, 53, 42, 77. Great. So the way that Google Sheets knows that you want to do a formula is you start with an equal sign, and that's an indication that you want it to do something. So I can say, I could say I wanted to add cell D1 and D2. So I could do that. I could say D1 plus D2 and hit enter, and it will get me my 58, which is the correct answer. However, a little easier for me, let me delete that, might be to do it this way. Equals, click on the cell, it will put the cell reference in automatically, plus the second one, and I have my 58. So I didn't have to worry about mistyping or anything like that. Now what if I want all of these things? What if I want everything from 24 on down to 77? Do I have to type the plus? No, you don't. I can say equals sum, because I want to sum them. Now whatever's going to be summed has to go in this parenthesis here, and then I can just click the first one and drag down to the end, and it's going to put it in as D1 colon D5, and that means everything inclusive from the beginning to the end. And I do that, and now it does the total. Another way to do formulas would be simply to choose them. So if I wanted, let me delete that. You might find this easier. If I'm in that cell, I could pull down my formulas. I could say, let's say math, and I'm going to scroll down here and find some. There it is, and you can see there's a lot of formulas. It's going to set it up for me with the parentheses and with everything else, and now I can just drag here and do that. Okay. One last way, equals. As I start to type sum, you see it appears. And this is probably the easiest way. You don't have to filter through all those equations. If you know the name of the function, which is sum, I start to type it. I click here. Now I can select. And if the only thing it needs is a trailing parentheses, and you hit enter, it will figure that out. If it's more complex, you're probably going to have to type in what you need, finish it off with a parentheses or whatever. But if the only thing missing is that final parenthesis, then it will do that for you. Okay, so that's how you work with formulas. Basically, there's lots of them. I could pick here. I could start to type average. There it is. I'd like the average of these numbers, please. Enter, and now I've got 46. I'm not really sure if the average is 46. Let me click on there and increase the decimals. Nope, it's exactly 46. I didn't know if there was any additional, although actually in doing the average what it would have done is it would have added the decimals for me more than likely, unless I had specifically told it not to have decimals, in which case it would have rounded it. Okay, so that's the basics of how you work with formulas. A couple of common formulas to know. Average and sum are two good ones to start with. There's also a minimum and a maximum, so it'll take a set of data. Let's try one of those. Equals min, that's common. What's the minimum of this set of data? Notice I'm not getting the 46, because this is my raw data and the 46 is the average. So I don't want to include the average in there. Let's label it here. Average, min, max, and total. We'll do a couple of simple ones. So the minimum number is 24, and if you look through there, that is actually the smallest number. There's max. The max of that set, again, starting at 70, stopping at 77. And there it is, the biggest number, 77. Now, one thing that I tend to do is I tend to color code my calculations so that I don't confuse and accidentally grab the, too many characters here. If I were to say, well, let's do total. So total equals, I'll start with sum, S-U-M. If I were to actually accidentally grab that 46, I would get the wrong answer, because I only want to go to D5, not D6. So if that happens, you can delete it and do it again, or you can simply edit the formula and that would work fine. Nope, didn't work fine. Okay. There you go. Edit the formula like that, enter, and there you go. Okay. Last couple of things. I'm going to delete what I have here, or most of what I have here. I do want to show you a couple of other things very briefly. What I'm doing here is I'm picking a cell that has no formatting on it, and I'm just copying over these cells, and that's one good way to, I could have removed it, but that's a little faster. Okay. When you're working with formulas or certain types of text, now here's January, very specific text, it's a month of the year. When you click on the cell, you may have noticed there's a dark box in the lower right hand corner. It's small, but it's there. If you grab that and drag it, since it knew this was January, it's assuming I want to populate this with months. So if I drag it far enough, now I have a full year. If I were to do something like this, if I was working with week 1, say, and I was going to collect data for 10 weeks, because that 1 is sitting there out by itself, it kind of figures out what I'm planning, and it will do that for me. So that can be a big time saver instead of having to type each one of those out. It also works vertically. So if I grab this week 1 and I came down this way, get rid of those two. If I had wanted the weeks to be listed vertically, I could do that as well. So you might want to test it out with certain things. 1/1/19, so there's the date, and now you can see it's incrementing the date. So very easily I could put in 1/1/19. If I drag this down, I'll do it for you. If I drag this down a ways, what are we, 100, 200, coming up on 365. I'm going to go a little further because I didn't start at the top row. You can see that I've just populated it. If I was collecting data from all year, I've just done a complete calendar. I have every day of the year. Well, what if we were only looking for, well, let's see. Let me come into calendar here and see where we are. Okay, January started on a Tuesday. So what if I only wanted the Tuesdays? So first thing I'm going to do is let's delete some of this stuff. And I came down here. The next Tuesday is going to be 1/8/19. If I selected 2 of these, you can see 15, 22, 29. It's picked up the pattern, and it's only giving me the Tuesdays. Now, I couldn't have done that by doing a single one, but since I basically told it this is a Tuesday, this is a Tuesday, let me select both of them and drag down that box. It's now only going to get me the Tuesdays every 7 days. Okay, lots of other tricks you can do with that, but that's a good place to start. Good basic setup, and I think a basic understanding of data types.